4 minutes, please.
Deputy Presiding Officer, may I agree with everything that Graham Day just said. His points were well made, and I absolutely endorse them and would wish to be associated with them. And I also pay tribute to the veterans who are members of this Parliament, specifically the Cabinet Secretary and my good friend Edward Mountain and others, and all those who support veterans throughout the United Kingdom. And I will limit my brief remarks to the subject of remembrance. I'm not going to try to attempt anything sophisticated or clever in my speech. I only offer my humble reflections. The annual Act of Remembrance is a moment in the year that punctuates our lives, and this year's remembrance will have added poignancy given the passing of Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth. We came to know well how much it meant to Queen Elizabeth to lead the nation in the annual Act of Remembrance each year at the cenotaph. We will once again be called by the 2 minutes of silence to reflect on the sacrifices and losses of the past. And with the passing of the generations for whom World War was experienced, it becomes ever more important, ever more necessary for us to take time to consider what remembrance means to us today, what it teaches us about the present and the future. Now, I'm old enough to have had the privilege of meeting veterans of both the First and Second World Wars. The nature of the fighting that these men experienced is something beyond my ken. They experienced the sternest test of the most awful type to defend our nation and a set of ideals: democracy, freedom and the rule of law. And it's been over a decade since the last of the First World War veterans died, so it is that we will soon, sadly, bid adieu to the Second World War generation. And I thank God for that generation and what they did for all of us in defeating Nazism in all its grisly ghastliness. I know that many young Scots continue to go to the battlefields of France and Flanders very often as part of organised school trips. And long may that continue. I know what the experience of Ypres, the Men in Gate, which was mentioned earlier, Tyne-Cot and Thiepval did for our children. Seeing the thousands of names of the missing, young men, most of them not much older than our children, was deeply moving for them and for us. It made real the loss. It made real the horror of war. The rows of neatly laid graves and symmetrical gravestones, so honoured and cared for, as mentioned earlier by Edward Mountain, by the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, is something also for which I give thanks. The stories of doomed youth, inscribed in stone, name, rank, service number, and a short personal inscription provided by a grieving family. These trips are so important. We must ensure that whatever financial constraints we are required to endure, that these trips continue. Learning these lessons is best accomplished by the incomparable experience that it is to visit them, not just to read about them in a textbook. Our young people must learn about the very full part that Scotland played, that the Battle of St Valery and Operation Cycle are not part of the NAT5 Second World War curriculum, is an anomaly that I would hope the Cabinet Secretary would agree with me should be corrected. We must continue to ensure that remembrance is fully inclusive of our young people. For many years, we have attended, alongside the Cabinet Secretary, the Act of Remembrance at the War Memorial in our village. And I have been moved by the sight of the pupils from the local high school and the primary school laying wreaths alongside the Scouts, the Cubs, the Boys Brigade, the Girl Guides, the Sea Cadets, the Army Cadets and the Air Training Corps. Remembrance has taken on even more meaning for our family as we have learned more about great-uncles killed in action in France. It has made remembrance more personal, the sacrifice and loss more poignant. We have taken time to tell our grandchildren, as they get old enough, what remembrance means in their family history. I keenly sense that it is our responsibility to see that remembrance is renewed and continued, to pass on the lessons and warnings of history, to teach them what it means to wear a poppy each November, to see it as a symbol of hope, renewal, sacrifice and peace. And finally, if we fail to remember, if we fail to help our children and our grandchildren remember, then the hope for a peaceful future will soon be lost, as it was before.